You said this moment where you kind of flipped over was when it was before CIA, right?
Correct.
Because it's right when you're leaving the academy. I think about that line a lot that you had in episode 107 with me. I mention it all the time where you're just like, we were going back and forth on whether things are all good or all bad. And we talked about this for like 10, 15 minutes. And I was trying to paint some examples, obviously, as someone who's not been out in the field like you. And you're like, I've lived that. You have not lived that. And like I could almost see you like hallucinating above your body because then like you went into this zone. I don't think the camera does it justice, but like you had this look in your eye where you were re-seeing all these things, talking about the worst examples of the worst things that human beings do to other human beings. And it really affected me because it's like it does put things in perspective. That's one of the nice things about this show. I sit in a podcast studio, but I have people from around the world come in here and sometimes tell me some things that, are harsh realities, if you will. But what I'm curious about is if at any point throughout your CIA career when you were seeing some of said things, if you wavered in your faith or thought that, maybe this is all bullshit because why the fuck would I live in a world where X happens?
So, no, it's actually the other way around. My time at CIA made me that much more confident in my faith because I saw the principles of the Bible lived all over the world.
Can you explain that?
So one of the things that you learn in the Bible is that, we live in a fallen world. We live in a world that's controlled by Satan. We live in a world where the enemy is the most powerful being on the planet, right? God is waiting for us somewhere else. The Holy Spirit is here with us to help guide us and lead us. But God doesn't claim to control the earth. He has sent his son so that his son can have cleaned our sin forever. God is not really interested in the earth. God is interested in the universe and the individual souls that choose to join him, right? There's, it may have been Ian or somebody else that helped me on my faithful journey. And there were 3 or 5 of them that were really important in my faithful journey at the academy. Once explained to me this idea of, the earth is a ball and Satan is a Rottweiler and Satan controls that ball. We are his plaything, right? The enemy, if you will. But the Rottweiler is on a leash, and the leash is held by God. So he gets to play with the earth as much as God lets him play with the earth. But otherwise, we're just stuck on this thing, right?
God lets him do it.
Because God is the one that's in ultimate control.
And what do you think of that?
For me, it's very liberating, because for me, it shows me how small I am. Yeah. It shows me how big the enemy is, which is what I need to know, because guess what 95% of my day is filled with? Temptation to do the wrong thing. And everybody listening is in the same fucking boat.
Yeah.
That's what fills our day.
Yes.
Temptation to do the wrong thing, not motivation to do the right thing, right? So it makes sense. I like that visual understanding of, big scary dog, I'm on a fucking ball. I can't beat that dog. Dog's going to do whatever the hell it wants to with me. But life doesn't end here. There's something bigger than the dog, right? So when I get chewed, swallowed, and shat out the back end of that Rottweiler, like that's the end. That's when I have the chance to actually join the Father. For me, it's a very comforting idea. Traveling, operating, meeting people around the world, you learn very fucking fast the world is a fallen place. You learn very fast Satan is in control. You learn very fast people accept, adhere, follow, obsess with
Satan's in control.
With their temptations, right? You find that everywhere. You see it, it's crystal clear. You can't fight it. You have to accept it. And then you learn a lot about yourself by seeing all the villainy of the world. The world is an evil, villainous place, right? It's full of people who do things that hurt other people. That's what it is.
You've said this before. You're like, human beings are not good.
No.
But like, my comeback to that is, yes, there are evil people in the world, and there are more than we would like to think. There's no doubt about that. Whatever got them there, it's a separate story, but like, that's a real thing. But then there are also good people too, and you seem to operate from the assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that like, no, that's not really the case. Most of them are just bad, and they're gonna be more likely to do bad things.
It's just a matter of what inputs will push them to a bad place. That's all it is, right? What inputs would get you to a place where you'd kill another person? What inputs would get you to a place where you'd steal from somebody else? What inputs would get you to a place where you would lie?
All right, let's run that example real fast. Our mutual friend Matt Cox talks about this, the threshold of committing crime. And he learned, because he never committed a crime until he's 30 years old, he learned that he has a low threshold.
Correct.
Right? But he's like, everyone has a threshold. And what I mean by that is, if you're the mother of an infant and the infant's starving, you'll steal some fucking bread. But that, to me, is that good? Is it good to steal? No. Is it technically, like, if you're looking at it purely objectively, like good versus evil, the evil option to do? Sure. But like, if you're a mother trying to, you know, give sustenance to your starving child and you take him one loaf of bread, you understand what I mean? Like, that's not an evil thing to me. It's not ideal, but that's like subjective. That shit happens.
The fact that you said it's not evil to me,
subjective,
shows that it's subjective. You know who it is evil to? The fucking court system. And the court system will say it's black and white, right? And the court system is built by men who built policy, right? People, humans, men and females, whatever, right? But it was built by human beings who built a policy to create and enforce a law. All the evil...
Objectively.
Yeah, well, because they needed something objective.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it would all fall to some magistrate who decides, right? So the point I'm trying to make is we live in a fallen world. It is an evil world if you're going to use the terms good and evil, right? There are pockets, moments of good as people aspire to benefit and help other human beings. Moments. But we are predominantly fallen. We are predominantly evil, predominantly selfish, predominantly self-interested, predominantly abusive, predominantly manipulative. That is what we do. We manipulate our kids to get them to brush their teeth and turn off the TV. We say that we're doing it for a good reason, and we forget the fact that one day those kids that are manipulated into watching TV today grow up into adults who are manipulated into whatever the fuck else, right? And they end up on trial like Diddy. We have...
Oh, my God. Not see that coming.
The world can't be broken into this definition of good and evil because it is in a predominantly evil world. If you're going to use those terms,
as a man of faith, you say that though.
As a man of faith, I say that too. I also say that as an experienced, objective CIA officer. Right, that is what the world is. So you have to look at it through consequences, inputs and consequences, inputs and outputs. Right, you have to look at it through that lens, because whether somebody has good intentions or evil intentions, you know, positive or destructive intentions, whatever the fuck you want to call it, you can always create predictable outcomes based off of predictable inputs. That's the world we have to live in.
All right, let's go back to what you just said, though. You said objectively as a CIA officer, something like that, right? I would actually argue that that's subjective, and here's why I say that. Your job is to go to not always dangerous places. Sometimes you go to a friendly country with a job, right? But it's not to go meet, you know, the friendly fucking village baker when you're there, unless you're trying to get information from them and they don't do anything good or evil. They just, you know, say, like, oh yeah, it's fucking 55 degrees today. And you're like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, middle class.
Sure. God damn you. God damn you. But I see why you get the comments you get. Anyway, but if you are going into these places, you are trying to find the people that can be manipulated and can be pulled to the other side, or you're trying to observe the people who are doing bad shit or are involved with the people doing bad shit. So subjectively, you are always looking at a sample size of like, hey, what, maybe not evil, but like not good, whatever's going on here, versus like, you know, the fucking lady teaching elementary school for 30 years and helping the kids. She means nothing to you. You're not doing jobs with her. You see what I'm saying?
I do. And you're not 100% wrong, right? There's a flaw in your logic, right?
Okay.
You are correct. The majority of our effort goes into a small subset of villainous people, right? You have to be a terrorist. You have to be an army general. You have to be a, you know, nuclear lab technician. You have to be somebody that we call a person of access. That person of access who has access to state secrets, that is where we predominantly put our time. But that doesn't mean that we only manipulate the people of access. Because to get to that person of access, everything from the flights to the taxi cabs, the hotels, you know, where you stay. When you live undercover, you are living undercover.
100%. Yeah.
That means everybody around you who is not a person of access still gets shaped, manipulated, puppeteered.
But you're doing that.
Correct.
Right? So the flight attendant who, gives you something she shouldn't give you because you're being nice to her, that's not bad.
No, but that shows that inputs and outputs can be controlled.
Okay.
Which is the original point that we were making.
Right. Why we're recording at 11:30 today instead of 12:30 because you switched it last minute.
Inputs and outputs.
Like you do every time.
Inputs and outputs. Yeah. But I also asked you first what you needed to make sure that you got what you needed.
Yeah, I told you afterwards. you didn't ask me.
Inputs and outputs drive everything. It's not about good or evil. The flight attendant has predominantly evil thoughts. She has predominantly self-interested, self-motivated, manipulative thoughts, right? She doesn't like having to work shifts that she doesn't want. She wants to get paid more for the job that she does half-assed. Like that's all of us. That's human beings, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that she's worth a CIA officer's time to further manipulate like a person of access.
Right. What was the worst thing you witnessed a human being do in your time undercover?
Human beings are horrible. I mean, it's hard to say a worse thing. In my subjective opinion, crimes against children, abuses against children is the absolute worst. And some of the worst abuses against children, you feel it in your guts. It's so fucking horrible. Is in Africa. And I was operating in a zone where there were child soldiers. And child soldiers are fed this concoction of gunpowder and cocaine to energize them and to focus them.
Gunpowder.
Yeah. And then it's split between the two. Like it's a combination of the two that splits. It's horrible for the body. But it immediately jazzes you up. It's a way of splitting and extending, a certain amount of cocaine. And then, and they're subjected to sexual abuses by senior ranking officers to humiliate and break their spirit and make them loyal to the senior officer in a very similar way of Munchausen syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how these children are cultivated to become dedicated, lethal children in cross-border fucking wars between warlords in Africa. It's a horrible, horrible thing.
Did you have to witness this from afar as a part of an op, or were you also in a situation where you had to act, where you're undercover and stand by and watch this and act like nothing's wrong?
No, this is a big part of the difference between CIA and law enforcement, right? CIA, you must always view it from afar. It's second or third ring, right? You're meeting with the general who's surrounded by dedicated child soldiers, and you're having like roasted pig with that guy, or roasted beef or roasted lamb with that guy, and he's telling you about what he did to that kid and how that kid was hard to break and how that kid was easy to break, and and
you have to sit there and listen.
You got to sit there and listen to it, but you don't have to witness it, right? We're law enforcement, and this is why I have such incredible respect for your FBI, your detectives, even your beat cops, right? They have to actually witness horrible shit, review the footage, review the audio tapes, look at the pictures to build a case that goes to court. I don't know how they sleep at night with what they've seen human beings do to each other. CIA is blessed beyond words that we don't ever have to witness it. We just have to take advantage of the fact that the person of access is showing us what their access is in the process of bragging about the atrocities they've carried out.
Sometimes you do witness it, though, because you're putting yourself into the right, I mean, it's a strange way to say it, but into the right places to get information.
Yeah, it's true. You witness some things that you don't want to witness, but you're also given the skills to be able to bow out, to be able to make an excuse that's viable. Like, you're given social skills so we can get out of the situation. Like when the guy has, too many bumps of cocaine and he calls his kids over and they start kissing on his arms, and you're like, you know what, man, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go make a call, talk to so-and-so, do this other thing. Like, I'm going to give you your space to enjoy yourself, and I'll be back in 2 hours. Right. And then he gets it and he's like, yeah, I'll see you in 2 hours, brother. Maybe 3. And you're just like, oh, I'm fucking out of here. Right. We can do that. Whereas law enforcement, that's when the evidence begins. So they don't have that benefit. When it comes to shit that humans do to other adults, like adult to adult, I have a higher tolerance for. advanced interrogation techniques, seeing people who are malnourished or seeing people who are diseased or seeing dark things, I can tolerate to a certain extent. But for me, it's when it bleeds into children that it becomes too much.
Did that take a while for you to be able to tolerate it at the adult level?
Yes. So I specifically remember seeing people doing horrible things. Like this is a stupid example, but I'll start there. I remember in college, maybe 19 years old. You weren't even a dirty thought, I think, when I was in college.
Nope. You met my parents. Relax.
There was this video that went out. It was a donkey show. It was a woman having sex with a donkey, and it went out viral. This was probably 99, 2000.
Was this on like Run the Gauntlet?
It wasn't even. There weren't even necessarily like porn websites. It was an email attachment that went everywhere. Right.
A woman fucking a donkey.
Yeah. A woman getting fucked by a donkey. And that was like when the whole term donkey show, which is now like, people talk about it in movies. It really, in my world, it started with that attachment that went out by email in circa 2000. And there's lots, drop it in the comments if this is how you found out about this shit too, right? And I remember being in the Air Force Academy, and I remember having 7 or 10 guy friends who were all in the same room, and we were all talking about whatever the fuck, and somebody saw the attachment and was like, oh shit, you guys got to see this.
This is a lady fucking a donkey.
Because for real, this is the joke about donkey shows. You can't not watch, right? So they double click on this, and we watch this thing play out. And I'm like, holy shit. I had nightmares. I couldn't shake that from my mental, like I couldn't buffer it out of my mental visual cortex for days, dude. For days I couldn't sleep right. For days it was like haunting me.
I ain't gonna sleep right from the image alone.
And I've learned from that moment that I am visually sensitive. There are things that I see visually that haunt me. And being part of the agency, I was able to talk about that with a psychologist. I was able to have like outlets for it, but I was also able to tell them that up front, like, hey guys, horrible shit upsets me.
Did you learn to turn it off? No,
I just learned how to cope with it, to help process it faster. Right. That was the main thing that came across for me. And going through operations and going through the process of seeing what I've seen, it helps to have an outlet that you already know exists. It helps to have a way of processing it at night. It helps to have a way of processing it with a therapist, with other officers.
You had to develop some ability to at least compartmentalize, though.
Yes, compartmentalizing is different than processing.
Of course.
Yeah. When you compartmentalize, it's there.
It's there, but you can still be functional.
Correct.
Right.
It's a super dark topic. Let me make kind of a lighter example. I had a case that I had to travel through Southeast Asia with, and the case. I may have told you about this before. Did I tell you about the asset that was really into ladyboys?
No.
Have I never told you this story? So I had this target who was really into ladyboys. Ladyboys are boys.
We know what they are.
But his specific version of ladyboys was partially post-op. Partially. So they were women from the waist up, and they were full-blown men from the waist down. No testosterone treatment.
Okay.
Right? So what that meant is they could get full-on, full-sized hard erections.
Okay.
But they were all lady from the top up. Just no hormones involved. So fake breasts, makeup, maybe facial cosmetic surgery, et cetera, et cetera. That was his preferred type. So being there to enable his fantasies, whenever we were together, we found the best ladyboy joints that we could find, right? And it was the American taxpayer dollars who made sure that he got the best dances he could get.
Somewhere Mike Mercedes-Benz is going, this!
Soft power! Soft power!
There it is! Oh my God. So, I mean, that's not as dark, though.
No, that's weird. I'm trying to say it's not dark. But that's the kind of... So what ladyboys do with each other to arouse their Johns is like, I'm visually sensitive, dude. I don't want to fucking be kept up at night watching 69s between ladyboys. That's not what I want to be doing, especially now when it's happening 3 feet in front of me and there's people walking around me and like people squeezing past you in a small space and their fucking erections are hitting your elbow and you're like, get the...
But if my tax dollar If my tax dollars are paying you, Andy Bustamante, you're going to get in there with those
You're going
fucking
to
lady
get that
boys.
mushroom stamp. That's what
That's
you're going to
right.
do. Doesn't not haunt you at night, right? So,
yeah.
but you can compartmentalize that, right? You can be like, I'm here to do a thing. There's the intel I need. There's the statement I need. There's the network connection I need. There's his phone left by itself. Now I can scan it. There's all this shit that you can focus on while dicks are swinging around your face, right? Objectively. But then when you go back at the end of the day, you still got to be like, what? Like, I still saw the thing that I saw. I can't just hold it in this compartment forever. I got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's this phenomenal deep cover knock that I worked with. And he had operations all through some of the hardest places in the Middle East. And unlike me, he was deep cover. Like I was.
You know, we just had a knock in here, right?
Oh, did you? I didn't know that.
Well, I want you to make this point.
So he operated in very, very deep cover. His whole life was just a series of traumatic incidents, right? Who he had to work with, how he had to collect against it, how he had to lie to the people closest to him, right? Separating from his wife to have essentially a cover wife somewhere else, just to make sure that his cover held so that nobody ever assumed he could be the same guy that's married and has a couple of kids back in the United States. All this shit, he had to go through a process of decompressing where he would come back and then the agency would put him into a cabin in the woods by himself, away from everything, where he had to go through his own internal process, being visited by a psychiatrist to work through, to get back to his American life so that he could then go back home to his wife and kids and actually be able to be a functioning husband, right? So it's really easy to get spun up into your cover identity. It's way harder to spin down after an op.
Oh, yeah.
And then go back into your normal routine life.
Yeah. We had this guy, Matt Hedger, in here. Had him in here twice to tell his whole story. And the only reason he can talk is because his cell, I guess you could call it, of Knox had a leak. And so a foreign intelligence agency leaked their names on the dark web like a year and a half ago. So the damage was done. So he had to be immediately pulled from the field. But he got into NSA when he was like 18 or 19, and then they pulled him out of that at 21 or 22 and trained him to be a knock for 9 months. It's like straight out of a movie, like the whole thing. And essentially he infiltrated one of the top 4 biker gangs for 4 years as a money launderer, drug smuggler, like a bunch of different other things. And that led him to, all as this character, connect with the cartels, which led him to the next decade or so where he was one of the chief money launderers for the cartels. And, you know, I've been thinking about him a lot while we've been having this part of the conversation with you, talking about the things you witness or the things you know happen or whatever. But there's, you know, with him, you can tell there's a lot going on there, a lot in his head, and a lot that he's never going to be able to get rid of because he had to sit in on these situations and act normal. But there's one story he told that just sticks with me and pretty much everyone who heard it, where he explains that he was taken to like a warehouse with, you know, on like business with the cartel. And I don't know how many guys were in there. Maybe it was like 20 or 30. And in the middle, there was a dude who had been beaten up, and he was, you know, tied with his hands behind his back on the ground, screaming, crying. And on the table was his 9 or 10-year-old son. And this guy apparently was accused of having stolen some money. And so they went around the room and they took a carrot peeler to the kid's face. And he said it was a test for him. You know, he's a money launderer. He wasn't like a muscle guy known to them that way. And it was like, is he going to react? You know, how is he going to react? What's he going to do? And he had to stand there feeling the way he feels in his head, obviously watching something unspeakable happen. You want to talk about evil. I mean, this is like the apex of it in many ways. But he had to pretend like it was cool. And I don't know. I mean, I could talk to him 30 years from now from being out, and I don't think you can ever possibly be normal just on that one example, let alone all the other things, you know, on micro examples or other examples like that happen over a 10, 15-year period for him. I don't know how you can possibly, like, erase it, that hard drive, but even remove that hard drive from playing in your head at all times.
There's a reason that when we get together, like when agency folks and FBI and, you know, Delta or SEALs or whatever. When we all get together, we don't swap stories. We don't swap stories like these because we all know we have them and we don't really want to relive them. And we definitely don't want to put that in somebody else's ear. Somebody who maybe has an experience close to it or similar to it that brings it back in like vividness and richness. And we also know that while there are resources that the federal government offers to help us process and cope with the traumas, it's really just to get us operational again. It's not to heal us.
Yeah.
It's not to fully process. It's just to get you back on the line again.
Yeah. They're sending you to the cabin like Rocky.
Yeah.
Get training. You got Drago. Yeah.
And that's it. And then after you've lived your utility, then you move on. And
they spit you out.
And maybe you get the VA, or maybe you don't, or maybe you get something else, or maybe you're such a high risk that they keep you in some basement with a red stapler at the agency, right? At Langley forever. But it sucks.
Do you like? I hear what you're saying about, and it's certainly human about the kids and that in particularly getting to. The one thing I keep thinking about though is, and I don't know if this was just pure compartmentalization. I'm not putting you on the spot, but I remember when we were recording the first Fed Fest with you, Jim, and Danny in 2022. I think that was Danny Jones number 166. We were getting into a conversation maybe like 2 hours and 45 minutes in that one, 2 hours, 50 minutes in that one, where we were talking about blackmail in first world versus third world countries. And you and Jim, obviously Jim has his whole background with seeing a lot of crazy shit around the world too. We're both talking about like sharing an example of like going to the bathroom in, a Southeastern Asian country, and there's a fucking 12-year-old girl sitting there that, is some sort of sex slave or something, and you just got to act like it's cool. And I remember like the thing that was affecting me about the two of you saying that is obviously the two of you thought that was fucking crazy and wrong, but you're like, yeah, that's just how it is.
And that's how the world is, right? There's I'm trying to think if there's any place in the United States like this. If there is, I haven't been there yet. When you travel the world, you see the subjection of all sorts of different, minorities for lack of a better word, but it's not ethnic minorities. Kids are forced to beg, and they're forced to beg so they can collect their begging earnings and bring it back to essentially a pimp who they then pay a portion of their begging earnings to in exchange for that pimp not beating them, not abusing them, not beating their mother who's in the back nursing the next baby beggar that's going to be coming up, right? That's just the way it is. You can't change that. You can't fix that. So why spend any calories worrying about that? It's just like the ladyboys. The ladyboys that are sitting around partially post-op, they didn't raise their fucking hand to do that. They were raised, they were found, they were trafficked, they were abused, and that's what they do now. That's not what they chose to do. Nobody chooses that lifestyle to live in some terrible cesspool back alley in some terrible cesspool Southeast Asian countries that isn't even what your nationality is, right? Like you're from Indonesia and you're in Vietnam. That's not what they chose, right? But human trafficking around the world is so commonplace that we don't even comprehend it as Americans. Human trafficking inside the fucking United States.
It's even here a lot.
And we don't even think about it. We don't even comprehend it, right? It's the way it is. I don't laugh. I love and saddened every time I go through an airport or I go through a hotel and I visit the restroom and you see the human trafficking posters that are on the door, right? Are you a victim of human trafficking? Translated usually into at least 2, sometimes 4 different languages. Like that's how common it is. It's so common that hotels and anywhere from Nashville to Madison, Wisconsin have these signs up. That's how common it is. And we walk past it every day. We see it around us all the time. And we just turn a blind eye in the United States, the freest country in the world.
Or we just don't notice it. Most people just don't notice it. I'm sure you notice it.
Yeah.
You pick up on it.
That's part of what I call a blind eye, right? There's willfully blind and then there's like unwittingly blind. Either way, you don't even know it's happening here. Super easy for us to point fingers and be like, oh, that backwards fucking country and XYZ, right? They're so crazy
Sure.
in Pakistan. They're so crazy in Greece. They're so crazy in,
Because it's not here. It's not our backyard. We
but
can
it
just
is.
say that.
Yep.
Yep. But it's, yeah. Yeah, it's a wild thing. Wild thing that we ignore that. Ed Calderon was just talking about that when he was here. He's like, are we going to recognize? And he has all these insane concrete examples of exactly, like almost down to the address of the hotels. Like, and he's like, here's the numbers. Here's what's going on. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's like, I can complain about it in Mexico for sure, where he's from. Like, that's a huge problem. But like, you also have the problem in your own backyard. It's crazy, man. But you don't strike me as the kind of guy who, how do I want to say this? It's not that you don't have empathy. You are just someone who has at least trained himself to understand that there's a place where you can actually step in, and there's a lot of places where there's nothing you can fucking do. And does that rectify some of it to yourself? Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
I don't think it doesn't rectify it in the way that it makes me feel better, if that makes a sense. So what I would actually say is I always struggled with empathy. Empathy was not natural for me. And I would argue that for a lot, not all, but for many CIA field operators, empathy is not natural. What's natural to us is kind of a cold view of
Well, you're
everything.
recruited for that.
But then they teach us empathy. Like they teach us how to understand, how to comprehend, how to visualize what somebody else is going through, because it's useful, right? When you don't carry the feelings that go along with it, but you can recognize that there are feelings that would go along with it, you can control yourself in the situation better. So for the first, half of my life, I didn't have to worry about the impact of empathy. It wasn't until after I learned it that I was like, oh, I can actually use this. And still, I don't have to worry about the feelings from it. There's no passive or very little passive impact for me that comes from empathy. That all helps so that I can do things I have to do, witness things I have to witness, say things that I have to say to get the outcome that I'm looking for, because that outcome is the end goal. And you set out on an operation. You put lots of time and effort into an operation for the outcome. There's this fantastic concept that exists in elite schools where before you put somebody through a challenging situation, you tell them up front what you're about to do is challenging. What you're about to do is hard. You will be uncomfortable. You will be cold. You will not sleep much. You will be hungry.
Set expectations.
Right? Yeah. Because, exactly, you increase the probability of success for the right people who go into the challenge because they already know what to expect, rather than being like, okay, guys, are you ready for this exercise? And you don't tell them how hard it's going to be. So if you have a group of 10 people and they're all trying to be elite, and you tell them how hard this next thing is going to be, maybe 2 of them drop out before you even start. So now your 5 instructors only have to worry about 8 students, instead of 5 instructors being spread among 10 students, 2 of which are going to take way more resources up because they're not meant to graduate in the first place. So now with your 8 that go through the hard training, maybe 6 come out the other side, and you only lose 2, but you save resources along the way, and you can pre-qualify the people before they ever go in, right? That's the benefit of telling people before they start a training how hard something's going to be. The same thing applies in operations. The reason we spend so much time planning an operation is because that whole planning period shows you it's going to be hard. It's going to be cold. You're going to be hungry. You're going to get sick. So you own your circumstances in pursuit of the outcome before you ever start. So then the whole time that you're in the mix, all you're focused on is the outcome. It's less impactful when the surprises pop up, when the tragedies pop up, when the dark things pop up, because you're so intently focused on the outcome.
Mm. Do you, like you say, empathy doesn't come naturally to you, but obviously you are, if you're going into a situation like the one you described, sitting with a general and he's got all these kids around him and he's telling you about what he did to him and you're feeling a type of way, obviously there is a human feeling with you right there that is practicing active empathy for those kids who have been thrust in this horrible situation who, I mean, how old are they? 8, 9, 10?
Yeah, somewhere between 7 and 11 for the most part.
So I'm always careful how I say this because I don't want to be misheard. But those 7 to 11-year-olds grow up, and 20 years later, they're the guy sitting in the chair doing that, bragging about all the other kids around them. Obviously, I have zero empathy for that act. But what I try to think about for the betterment of like the future of the world, you know, picking off statistically, trying to get things a little better over time, is like when I come across characters like that, obviously for me, usually not personally, but I try to understand what got them there. So if I can understand what got them there, and there's people who can actually do something about that, the idea is not necessarily to save them from, you know, the evil fucking sadistic sick fuck they are now, but like, how can we help prevent having 6 kids around them? And, you know, it sucks to even say it this way, but next time it's 4. And eventually you get it down to 0 a few generations from now. You see what I'm saying? Like, do you ever think about what got the person to where they are and have empathy for that without having empathy for them and the actions they take?
This is not going to be a popular answer. They all just need to die. That's how you break the cycle. You've got this fucked up guy who was, just like you said, once a fucked up kid next to a fucked up guy. But the other 15 kids, the reason he's the one in the chair now isn't because he was the most ruthless, isn't because he was the most diabolical, is because the other 14 died because they're child fucking soldiers. They're not trained, they're not equipped, they're not fed, they don't have the energy. They go to war and they get killed. They get killed in the jungles by insects, by vermin, by reptiles, by other child soldiers, by adult soldiers. Right? They die. They kill themselves. So I am not someone who believes you can undo that trauma. I understand there are people out there who try. And I understand there are phenomenal organizations out there who are saving victims of sex trafficking and bringing them into halfway houses and trying to save them and educate them and help them work through their trauma. And that shit is hard. Personally, I have not witnessed a success story where the person ever becomes anywhere close to normal after being rescued from that situation. I have heard more stories of people being rescued from that situation only to return to the situation or kill themselves or hurt themselves or have to go on to long-term medication to basically subdue all of the thoughts from that, right? This is what's happening right now in Israel and Palestine. Netanyahu is justifying this ongoing destruction of Gaza. He's expanded into the West Bank. Yeah. All he's doing is guaranteeing more generations of Hamas.
That's the idea.
That's what's happening, right? The fact that this guy 10 years ago said there can be no Palestine, there can be no peace with the Palestinians. He swore this over a decade ago.
A lot longer than that.
Right?
Yeah.
And now we're seeing it play out every day, right? And the conflict that we're seeing in the Middle East isn't anywhere close to ending. We're not going to see peace between the Palestinians and Israel anytime soon. If anything, we're going to see increased tensions between Israel and Turkey because of what's happening in Syria, right?
Yeah, can you explain that? It's funny. I wanted to talk with you about that today. This is perfect. Can you explain the proxy war, if you will, going on there?
And I love, again, what have we been talking about for 3 years? Proxy wars, right? And now you just see the next one literally evolving in Syria. Yeah. So you've got Syria fell under the Assad regime, and after a multi-decade civil war that was atrocious, Syria was basically left with a power vacuum. HTS, which is the indigenous force that was trained in Turkey that swooped in and basically routed Assad's regime out. HTS now controls approximately 30-ish% of the country. They are the stand-in government. They are the kind of recognized by Turkey government. They are the ones in control of the capital and most of the eastern side of the country. Israel has moved in to actually take territory from Syria that they believe has been used and will be used again to support Hamas and Hezbollah. Because Syria has always been kind of an uncontrolled zone that support from Iran travels through Syria to prosecute conflict against Israel. So Israel shored up one of the borders, the northern border closest to them, and took control of that themselves, saying, hey, we want to make sure that we control this so that we can prevent Hamas and Hezbollah from being reinforced through Iran or by Iran through Syria. Simultaneously, you've got Turkey. Turkey is the one who backed HTS. Turkey is the one that wants to see Syria return to some sort of economic capability because Turkey has a huge border with Syria. Turkey has always enjoyed like the closest economic benefits of partnership with Syria. Assad and Erdogan used to be close friends before Assad went fucking batshit, right? So Turkey has lost a huge trading partner because Syria fell, because Syria went into civil war and then ultimately fell.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. So Turkey wants to see Israel stabilized. Israel wants to see Turkey not stabilized to a place where Iran can abuse it. And you got in the middle of all this question of the Kurds. The Kurds are seen in many ways as terrorists by the Turks, which then the United States backing the Turks also to a certain extent see a subset of the Kurds, PKK specifically, as terrorist groups.
But the U.S. also kind of loves the Peshmerga. Like, we do a lot of work with them.
It's a horrible failure in American policy.
Yeah.
What's happening with the Kurds.
I talk about this a lot.
And there isn't anybody with an ounce of intelligence that wouldn't agree what's happened to the Kurds is fucked up and wrong, and the United States is in the middle of it all.
Isn't it kind of weird, though, that they effectively, like, we have these lines on a map that are drawn, right? And they say Syria, they say Iraq, they say Iran and all this. But effectively, I could draw a line right now with my finger on that map, and I could carve out a whole bottom part of Syria, a top part of Iraq, and I'm not looking at a map right now, but some other places as well, where the Kurds are in charge, and it's not like they're paying fucking taxes to the government. So it's like they have a country, but they don't have a country at all, and like they've done a lot of work with us in the war on terror, and yet we still don't go and use our big American dick and say, hey, give these guys a country because there's too much going on there.
Yeah, it's absolutely fucked up. It's wrong in every way, and there's no argument there, right? And that's, I think, the biggest tragedy of it all. There's no argument how wrong it is, and yet it continues to persist. So what we have now is this proxy conflict where Israel wants to encourage Syria to essentially break into ethnic groups. It wants to see Syria dissolve into 5, 7, 3 different ethnic states. And then it wants to be able to leverage Israeli influence on each of those states to gain control of additional regions to protect itself from Iran.
Or potentially get themselves to fight each other so they have a reason to move in.
Or, I mean, maybe. Israel's got its own issues. It's trying, it has been a huge power broker in the Middle East. There's arguments now that it's trying to build a hegemony in the Middle East. It's trying to become the center of power in the Middle East. Turkey's trying to do the same thing, right?
Turkey
in
the Middle East.
In the middle, oh yeah, because Turkey, you got to remember, Turkey is Muslim. Mm-hmm. It's just also secular, right?
But Erdogan's moving he's moving that notch a little bit. He's not moving it away from being secular, but he's not as secular as they have been in the past.
Correct, and I think a big part of that is what we talk about when we talk about authoritarian leaders. He's a strong man leader.
Yeah.
So he does what he needs to do to maintain control governmentally, but also individually and personally. And that's a big part of how he supported HTS's movement across Syria and the ousting of Assad. That's the proxy war that everybody's worried, not everybody, the proxy war that intelligence analysts are watching now is Israel and Turkey are not going to go to war with each other. It's not going to happen.
No.
But how much conflict will happen in Syria because of support from these two groups? How much of PKK and HTS fighting ethnic groups within Syria that are supported by Israel, how much is that going to play in? And then what's Iran going to do to abuse that proxy conflict? Because an unstable Syria is in Iran's best interest, because that's how they can continue to get goods to Hamas and Hezbollah.
What do you? I mean, you brought it up here. What's going on in Gaza with all that? What do you make of that, other than the obvious points that like it's horrible? Like where does this go? Do you see a ceasefire happening? There's a new administration here, obviously. I don't know how much that affects things, but like to me, you can say multiple things at the same time, and that seems to be what the internet has the hardest time doing these days. But like, what happened on October 7th was terrible. We don't support terrorism. I don't think Hamas is a good group. I think it's horrible. Hezbollah, same thing. I have no problem with them getting killed. But when you look at the imagery of Gaza, and not just, a quick propaganda video, but when you actually look at full-blown, massive miles of video where you just see a completely leveled place, as a human being, I say to myself, I always just bring it back home. I'm like, listen, we had Bush Cheney here. I wouldn't want to be associated with that. Right now, they have a government that 27% of their people elected, right? There are a lot of people in Israel who do not fuck with what they're doing in Gaza. Yet it continues to happen, and it does seem like, you mentioned it with the West Bank as well, it seems like it is planned for them to take this land and at the very least ethnically cleanse the people from it. And at the forefront, do things that, people use the word genocide with some of this, because they are like, it's one thing to target where a Hamas guy might be. It's another thing to blow up an entire fucking 15 blocks because one guy might have been in there. You know what I mean? Like, isn't this just wrong at this point?
Again, we're getting to this question of right and wrong, right?
Yeah, you're the wrong guy to ask that.
It's true. It's true. Here's the truth about what's happening in the Middle East. And this is a sad truth, but it's a truth that we need to all understand.
Okay.
Authoritarian rulers, people who move into that authoritarian power vacuum, don't do it on behalf of their country. They do it because there's multiple simultaneous benefits. That is exactly what we're seeing right now with Netanyahu. Prosecuting a war against Hamas is very convenient to him for multiple reasons. And it's very convenient to the far right wingers in Israel for multiple reasons.
Yes.
It gives them a chance to keep the society distracted from their own problems. It gives Netanyahu a chance to stay out of the court system, where he's due for judicial reasons, for corruption and embezzlement and everything else, right? So he wants this war to keep going, because if he plays it right, he gets to win all over the region, build this new future Israel, build up his own supported power base so that maybe he can be pardoned for his crimes, or he can even have his crimes dismissed later on because he is the guy that brought back all of Israel, right? So there's nothing but incentive for Netanyahu to continue attacking. And he also knows the only real power out there that can keep him from expanding is the United States. And Donald Trump, being in control of the United States right now, is going to continue to let Israel run on whatever line it wants to run.
And why is that?
Because upsetting Israel and upsetting the Jewish diaspora in the United States is a bigger risk to the United States than it is worth policing Netanyahu, right? Having a base of people in the United States that support Netanyahu and having a good relationship with Netanyahu is economically better for the United States. Having Israel win, having Israel destroy Palestinian territory, rebuild infrastructure, having them annex space in Syria and turn it into economically viable land, all of that is in the United States' best interest economically. So why would you stop that? It makes total sense, and Netanyahu knows that. So he's going to keep doing what he's going to do because he knows Trump's not going to get involved. Getting involved is a purely social move, not an economic benefit. And I've talked to you about this before. Like at the core, geopolitics is just economics.
Economics, yeah.
Right? Why does Turkey care so much about Syria? The economics, right? That's it. So why does the United States not give two shits about Syria? The economics, right? We've watched this play out in Ukraine. We've watched this play out in Gaza. There's no economic benefit to us. So, and even worse, there's an economic benefit that does come from the expansion of power.
Isn't there an economic disincentive, though, to allow or tacitly not get involved in a conflict where Israel is effectively creating a powder keg of the next generation of people who are going to want to kill them, and by proxy people in the United States for supporting this? Economically, that's got to be bad long term.
Yeah, but you're talking about like a scale where you've got 5 coins in one hand and 1 coin in the other. Like, is there a disincentive? Yes. Is it enough to change the weight? No. And here's the geopolitical example. The Middle East, the Khaliji states of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, they hate what's happening right now to the Palestinians. And as long as the United States doesn't pull the leash on Israel, they're looking at the United States saying, hey, you could fix this, but you're not. So the United States has a shitty kind of diplomatic relationship right now with Khaliji Middle East, with the Khaliji Arabs, because
of what's
happening in Israel. But they can still work that, right? Because at the end of the day, Saudi Arabia still needs our weapons and we still need their oil. So we're kind of like, we can both agree that what's happening in Israel isn't right. And Donald Trump can meet with, MBS and say, hey, I'm going to call Netanyahu, and he can call Netanyahu, and then he can call MBS and be like, talk to Netanyahu, but he's not changing his mind. Like, that shit can be dragged out for a long time.
It's like the two guys who are sitting there just like staring out like, yeah, it's so bad.
Yeah, it's a donkey show.
Anyway, how about that deal? Is that going through on Friday? Yeah, like that's what it feels. And it's not to make it a comedy movie because it's not. There's people's lives in the middle, but doesn't surprise me. That's what it comes down to.
And what I think is a phenomenal thing in history right now that we all get to witness is we get to see this play out in multiple places simultaneously. When you see the same result multiple times, you can't help but accept the truth. We don't give two shits about Ukraine because there's no economic benefit for us. We don't really care what's happening to the Palestinians because there's no economic benefit to us. We don't really care what's happening to the Syrians because there's no economic benefit to us. So even though we could and should, based on the international image that we've painted for ourselves as the United States, we should be involved, but we're not involved. In fact, the organization that would help the most was USAID, and we have instead gutted and shut it down.
Damn it. I knew we needed them. I didn't know we needed them.
That's the point, right? We could be creating hospitals. We could be doing humanitarian support. We could be evacuating children to safe harbors so that they can have education, so they don't have to grow up in that trauma. But
I hear you. Let's go back to the initial point at the beginning of this podcast, and we went on an awesome, very long weave right there, but let's weave our way back here. So you had said USAID was good, and you were like prior to Trump won, right? So let's start there. What happened that made it not as good?
It's not as good. It's less effective. It's less effective. In a world that's controlled by authoritarian powers, soft power doesn't really play well, right? It's the difference between like when you're flavoring a soup with salt versus flavoring a soup with paprika, right? Soft power is paprika. It might make the deviled egg look pretty, but the deviled egg still just tastes like deviled egg. You don't even taste the paprika. But you add a little bit more salt, you make a lot more flavor. Authoritarian rulers can add salt to whatever they want to add. They can
smash heads.
They can smash heads. They can make people disappear. They can close business deals. They can single-handedly write executive orders, right? That completely change policy. Soft power doesn't get to do that. Soft power takes time. It's hearts and minds. It's slow. There was a time when slow was working because there was a time when democracy around the world was growing. And democracy means people have to develop opinions. They have to place votes. They have a say in who gets elected, right? That's not the world that we live in anymore. Netanyahu's been in power since almost 2012.
I mean, technically way longer before that too.
And there have actually been elections in Israel, right?
Yeah, they have so many parties.
Yeah, there's only been one person other than Netanyahu who was in power during that window of time, and even then, that guy was replaced by Netanyahu.
Naftali Bennett,
right? And you've got Bashar al-Assad in Syria that's been doing the thing. You've got Erdogan that's been doing the thing. You've got Xi Jinping that's been doing the thing. You've got Vladimir Putin that's been doing the thing. Like countries have been growing authoritarian, and we're seeing a shift in all the other third world and developing countries all through Latin America. You're even seeing it in European politics. You're definitely seeing it in Southeast Asian politics, where strong man leaders are taking over and democratic leaders are backing away or losing elections, right? And that's the shift that we're seeing. That shift really started circa 2014, 2015. When we saw Erdogan in Turkey
coup.
The Turkey coup in 2016.
Yeah.
That was a gigantic red flag. I will never forget the day that my wife and I saw that on television. We looked at each other and we were like, holy shit.
What a name, too. Turkey coup. That was awesome.
Turkey just had a coup that failed, and then there was all this extrajudicial punishment. And that was the most secular, most reliable government, the only really state in the Middle East that has a separation of church and state. And they just went fucking crazy overnight.
And what happened a year after that?
You're going to have to tell me on this one.
The Ritz-Carlton prison in Saudi Arabia. Crazy.
So you're seeing testing. Like this is a great example for anybody who's in the IT world, right? Boundary testing. At what point does the system fail? How far can you push it before the system fails? And that's what we're seeing, people taking steps all over the place. When does the system fail?
All right, so you talk a lot on every podcast we've ever done, and on every podcast you do almost. You talk a lot about China, and at the brass tacks of it, the big reason is because they're the number 2 GDP in the world, right? And they're just behind us. It was last I checked, it was like 20 to 18 or something like that in trillions. China, as you pointed out earlier, again in this conversation, has something like called the Belt and Road Initiative, and China 2025, and I think China 2050, whatever the fuck all of them are, where they are using soft power around the world. They're buying ports in Greece, they're buying up fucking infrastructure all over Africa, and basically raising debt that these countries, or in South America, they know they can never repay, and just in return they'll be like, all right, we'll forgive the debt, but you're going to let us do X, Y, and Z, right? And they've been really, really effective about it. And this is why, like, I live in the real world, and I understand something like soft power, meaning something at the core of what USAID is supposed to be, is critical. It really is. What happened, though, to where our soft power suddenly was about, like, spending fucking, $1 million to move trans initiatives in fucking Colombia? Like you and I both know that's a waste.
Right.
There's like, but someone did that. Someone said, yes, I will approve this. Let's go. And there had to be a motive behind that. What is the motive behind that? And why are we doing shit like that rather than, I don't know, normal shit like building real estate that'll help people in other places, but in exchange, we have some fucking soft power against someone like a China or something like that.
That's the politics of it. And that's where the problem sets in. We have to remember that in the United States, as shitty as it is, inside the United States, every congressperson and every senator who sits on a board or a committee feels the need to justify their seats so that they can run on something for re-election from their constituency. But their constituency is not a representation of the United States. It's a cross-reference of just their constituency,
yes, that's right?
So here's some bureau in New York or some borough in New York that thinks completely differently than this municipality in Alabama. But you have human beings who have to represent both of those, and now they come together and they sit on a committee and they have to decide what they're going to do. When we were prosecuting the war on terror, there was a lot of focus on economically incentivizing and giving alternatives to the kids and the teens and the young adults who could become jihadis. Right? How do we give them something else to plant other than opium? How do we give them some other way to make money so they don't have to join, ISIS? How do we give them some other opportunity so they don't turn jihadi? Because if we can upset that, what they call the radicalization ladder, if we can upset the radicalization ladder, we can essentially cut off the flow of new recruits for the future. And it was working for a while. And that's why you started seeing digital recruiting efforts and why you started seeing lone wolf ISIS operators in the United States, because we were effectively cutting off the pipeline of future recruits. Well, then as we started winding down war efforts, early 2000s or early 2020s, as we started winding down those recruits, we had this huge infrastructure of USAID that because it's the government, if you don't use it, it gets taken away. So now all these AID programs are trying to struggle to find a justification for why they should continue to be funded. And you have all these mid-level and senior level officers who have grown in an era of global war on terror who now need to justify themselves for the next 15, 20 years so they can retire. And you have this base of senators and congressmen who are trying to create excuses so that they can go back to their constituency and say, see, we're doing a good job. And that's how you end up having these ridiculous...
You're looking at it as government incompetence.
Absolutely. It's government incompetence. And it's not incompetence at USAID. It's incompetence for the people who have to dictate the policy that USAID has to execute.
What do you think of the vitriol and anger at what's happened, leading to the pendulum shift in the other direction of people now supporting and saying, get rid of the whole fucking thing?
It's sad. It's not the best way forward, but I understand where it's coming from, because just like we're seeing with Doge, just like we're seeing with so much of the American government right now, the idea of saving $1 trillion is really motivating. The idea of slowly improving the effectiveness of a government agency is not so motivating, right? So instead, we're all we're culturally at a place right now where we're like, let's just break the toy and build a better toy in its place, with no guarantee that the new toy is actually going to be better.
I mean, cynically, I don't have a lot of hope for these types of things, because this is where I do agree with you, and I think people don't look at this point enough, in that the government's just massive, and there's regular, Jim and Joes around the water cooler who should be doing something else and they're not, and then something doesn't get done, and there's a slippery slope to that, and then, this happens and that happens, and boom, you have a fucking budget problem. Like, I get that. Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.